thoughts then, Ciarán, when you saw Limerick beating Galway 224 to 118 the other day, and the man that was playing at number 6, you know, Gerard Hegarty had been named number 7, Kyle Hayes ends up playing number 6. The team, sorry, Will O'Donoghue, who plays number 6, Kyle Hayes goes out in the wing. What was your thoughts on that, and how did you think it worked initially?
To be fair, right, I had a fair idea it wasn't going to start like that. I had a fair idea they were all going to come back one and kind of do a semicircle, and that's the way it turned out. Willem went back, Kyle went out, Kyle went back up, David Reedy moved in, and Keane went out. Now, and I suppose Limerick will get away with that, Shane, and the reason they will get away with that, they're a seasoned, composed team. It won't upset anyone else, whereas if you look at the Clare, starting Shane O'Morey at cornerback, you know, you can kind of say to yourself, right, did it work or didn't work? We'll come to that in a minute. But if there's one team that will get away with a few old moves like that in the one motion, for want of a better word, is Limerick, because of their experience, because of their composure, and and I suppose ultimately because of how good they are.
Yeah, it's true. And like, in terms of how Galway started out so well, and then there was a complete takeover from Limerick, stopped them scoring, well, reduced them to just 6 points in the final 45 minutes plus injury time. What do you think was the key turning point in the game?
I think Limerick were probably like rabbits in the headlights there for a spell. I think they probably got a bit confused because, Cathal Mannion was usually the man that kind of went back. And from where I was watching it, it appeared to be Concannon that was doing an awful lot of covering. I felt Galway tactically did everything. It did a lot right in the first half. Their shape. Like, I looked down at several occasions, Conor Whelan had acres of space in front of him and outside of him. So Galway were kind of retreating, and it suited them. But for some reason or another, okay, and I suppose I always say this, Shane, you know, half time is where most games are won and lost. And half time last weekend was huge for the 4 teams. Limerick got it right and Kilkenny nailed it. Because Limerick came out in the second half. There was a spell there in the second half, Shane. There was just dullness, there was quietness, and the spectacle was over. For me, the game was over after 10 minutes second half. And I suppose watching the game, my feeling was if Limerick were going to get a performance against Galway, they had to come up with the best performance this year so far. They did that, but not only did that, but in the second half they went to a total different level, and I kind of was smiling and saying to myself, yes, their machine is back.
Do you know, actually, myself and Michael were just talking beforehand, this could be 3 years in a row now that you end up with a Patrick Swell, 3 different Patrick Swell hurlers making hurler of the year. Like Aaron Gillan's form, he's just a sniper at this stage, isn't he, Ciarán?
Oh, without a doubt, Shane. But Shane, to be fair now, right, and I don't want to be too hard on Dahi Burke now for that goal, and it was a great goal. Like, Dahi's a seasoned campaigner. He's there a long time. And, you know, I do remember the league game this year. Aaron Gillan got a goal against Galway in the Gaelic rounds in the league. A very, very similar goal, coming from behind, catching it. Like, as a full-back, you have to protect the goalie, you have to mind the square, you have to be strong, you have to be ruthless, you have to be physical. So Aaron actually done Dahi in that particular one. So it was an easy old goal to give away. But to answer your point, Gillan is on fire, and he's on fire. Mainly why he's on fire, Shane, is he's acres of space. No matter a cornerback or a fullback in the country, the type of ball that he's getting and the space that he's had, there's no defender that will defend it.
Or his movement, Ciarán. Like, his movement is relentless. People won't see it on TV. If they're at the matches, they probably do. And Seamus Flanagan's excellent at it as well. But
yeah, the three boys now last week, to be fair, and I know they get the subs around, they all did well. You know, Flanagan took Flanagan a while. After 20 minutes, you could be scratching your head taking Seamus Flanagan off. Next thing, all of a sudden, bang. So the 3 of them were excellent. But Gillan, to give credit where it's due, Gillan has done that from the start of the season to now. Whatever comes at the end of the year is a bonus for him. It's the last thing in his head. But to be fair, I do remember 2 or 3 years ago, he was after a very good season. And I was kind of saying, if he's any bit of a good find, he's there with an old chance of picking up hurler of the year. I think now as it stands, he has it. It's my own opinion.
Just on that, Ciarán, on Gillan, by all accounts, he wasn't always that good in the air, just chatting to various lads from the well. Is that something he really went after himself? Like, just to have that ability to be that out ball, that no matter what, if you get the ball in around him, no matter what way it comes in, he has a chance of winning. It's some asset to have, but by all accounts, he wasn't always that good in the air.
No, but in fairness to him, he would have actually worked extremely hard on that, Mike. You know, and I suppose a good inter-county hurler, if you're going to be the full package, I suppose the big areas where you need to look at, where am I weak in my game? What else, where other of my skills can I improve? You know, like good hurlers will do that. And you hear it in the Premiership soccer players all the time, you know, they're trying to improve. Hurling has gone that way too. And in fairness to Aaron Gillane, you know, he would have worked extremely hard on his weaknesses. And you're right, would he have been good in the high ball once upon a time? No. But is he exceptional now in a high ball? Without a doubt.
It just goes to show if you go after something, how much of an expert there do you become in it if you really go after it.
Oh, big time. And I can remember, you know, inside in training with Limerick, you know, the boys be slagging, you know, I was 9 times out of 10 striking left into it. They were always saying about your weak side. But I would have spent hours on the local field practicing on my weak side. And if I knew that I was good on my right, and I suppose what I used to do was try to stand in one position and hit the ball straight up as high as I could, right? And I believe if anybody can do that with your weak side, then your weak side isn't weak. So, you know, you have to improve. You have to practice where you probably mightn't be that strong. With me, it was my weak side and my so-called weak side. And I suppose, like, when I got that point so many years ago from the weak side, that put my weak side to bed.
I was going to ask you. I'm sure you gave it the big. You sure you gave it the big one to a few lads after. Like, where's the weak side now?
Ciarán, during the analysis of the 2 games of the weekend, and obviously Kilkenny beat Clare also, there's been a lot of talk about what went on the sideline. For example, when Nicky Quaid did the old, whether it was he got a tap in the stomach or the usual contact lens trick, which he's done a load of times. So, you know, there might be the boy who cried wolf, even if he tries to say it wasn't contact lens this time. But Henry Shefflin seemed to get very emotional on the sideline. You've talked about emotions in the past and keep them cool. And then Brian Lohan, was he cool enough on the sideline, both in terms of, like, I suppose he's got a bit of a track record now of making decisions that, you know, are somewhat questionable. But, like, he'd certainly be getting quite animated on the sideline. Is that something that's proved decisive there at the weekend?
Well, I'd imagine it has to play a part, Shane. And, you know, and it's going back to learning from old experienced guys. You know, Phil Binnis would have always said to me as a kid, "Hi, Ciarán, don't ever forget the coolest man is always going to come out on top, whether that's on the field and off the field." And Shane, all I can do is give my experience of both sides. And I would have been at both sides. And I would have been extremely conscious the day of a match, no matter what type of match, especially if it was a big game, you know, that I had to be at my best and I had to be as composed, because if I'm pulled towards the referee or if my hands are flying and if I am roaring, then I am not fully tuned into exactly what's happening around me. And it's different for other people. Some fella might come on, you know, whether it's Davy or Brian Lohan, there must be something in the water or Claire. They might come on and say, you know, that's what gets them going. But for me, everybody will have their own opinion. Like, Derek Ling wasn't hopping around like a gazelle. Like, he was nice, cool, composed. And for me, I think that's the road to go, because, you know, you will be seeing them with a clearer set of lenses there. No matter what is going on, there's nothing going to rattle you. You still see what's happening around you, Shane.
Just on that, Ciarán, I think Brian Lohan, like, he might correct me on this, but I actually think he got lost in the occasion the other day. Aaron Shanahan, who's one of their most dangerous players off the bench, I think he was actually forgotten about amid the whole game.
I was going to make that point, right? Because the one player you don't want to see, well, from a Limerick man coming on with 10, 15 minutes to go, was Aaron Shanahan. And when I think it might have been 2 minutes into extra time, I said to myself, by God, and I forgot this trick. My feeling was the same way as you, Mike. Like, and that's what can happen. Whether it was designed or by mistake, I don't know. But he's a player that you would bring on because he's tall, he's able to grab a ball, get a score, create a score. And actually, as it turns out, he could have made a huge difference if he was there for the last 10 minutes.
Well, if you look at that and you compare, Kilkenny subs were like, it was nearly preordained that X was going to come on at this time, and it was all regimented, and they had everyone in place. I just couldn't believe that with the game in the melting pot, with Clare needing a score, that this lad he got 3 minutes. I just thought it was baffling now, I have to say. And I do think it was emotions maybe getting the better of it, lads maybe getting sucked into the occasion, whereas it definitely didn't happen with Kilkenny, and it's not something that happens with Limerick either. Kylie can be animated at times, but there's a hell of a lot of coolness behind them as well.
Right.
There's lads telling them that we need to bring in X or we need to bring Y at this time, you know.
Yeah, you're right. I actually felt the exact same. And Shane, another point. I suppose if I got animated on the line, I suppose I just wouldn't stop. I continue. My point is, it can be neck for some people, but if I get cross and animated, you know, I find it hard to kind of hold it. I could catch someone by the throat. My point is, like, and some people, I won't mention any names, but some people kind of do it, kind of just show the hands and just put up. But other people then they go a small bit further, you know. And like, bottom line here, I believe myself personally, you have to be at your best as a manager on the day. You have to have the ability to see everything. And if you're going to get caught up with roaring and shouting, fourth official, linesman, referee, then you're going to be blinded.
And actually, it was commenting here, Shanahan is Lohan's clubman, I think. Yeah, they're both Wolf Tones. He should have been in there for at least 15 or 20 minutes.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, Tony Kelly is another one who was quite animated during the game, Ciarán. And there was obviously that decision that went against him, that high ball around the 45, give or take, against Mikey Butler. And there was another time he got really animated and he was in the referee's kind of face as well. So it just didn't go for him either. Second year in a row at this stage.
No, and in fairness, Shane, you know, Clare pay now, and they weren't a million miles away from this now. So you can imagine if they got all these small things right, how close they would have been. Because having said all that, they weren't too far away, and they were a bit unlucky. There was a great, I think Conlon started. There was a great move, and I think it was Shane O'Donnell left it off the last minute as he was slipping. It would have been an outstanding goal. It came from Conlon through all the lines, and I think Shane, as he was falling, he didn't pass it, but probably could have given it quicker. And Conor Fogarty came back, dived, blocked it. If they got that whole goal as well, if they got the tactics right, if they kept it cool and stayed focused, you know, they weren't too far away if Shanahan came on early. So I think Clare's defeat the weekend, you know, they played a big part in it themselves.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, and in terms of like Limerick, so like, is there any player that you kind of felt stood out more than anybody? Anything that from the game that you'd want to remark on?
Yeah, I thought Kyle Hayes in the second half and Burns. I thought that it was as aggressive as I seen him play in a while, and they were putting down nice little silent markers. I thought the way they've managed Keane Lynch for the last 4 weeks, obviously, whatever they did in the 4 weeks, we saw it the weekend, and you know, I think they managed him brilliant, did well in the first half, but he really came into his own in the second half. I thought our full back line were extremely composed in the second half. It was like a training session. So looking at the whole squad, they're not too far away from at their best with their second half performance last week. Even though Nicky Quaid had the whole pile to do, but his experience is absolutely brilliant, slowing down the game when you're meant to slow it down, and he's doing that and getting away with it.
Yeah, just on that, like I think people are kind of it's obviously a point that's been brought up or whatever, but like as Eddie Brennan said to me the other day, he said, don't hate the player, hate the game. If you can get it, like that's the experience. Like if you can get away with it. But like if it happens again, Ciarán, now I think if it happens in the All-Ireland final, I think the referee will probably go, no, listen, go off and we'll put someone else in goals to take the puck out, because as Shane said there, it's happened a couple of times maybe. It's happened in their last 2 games. But like, it is cuteness. Like, how many times did you go down in the game at different stages when you needed to go down? And it's you can't buy that experience as well. No,
that's experience, cleverness, and cuteness. And Tidney's fault. Tis actually, bottom line is, if it's anyone's fault, is the man in black with the whistle. So it's up to him, you know. And as Michael said, like, if he tries this, I'd imagine if I was a referee, I'd be sprinting in 60 yards, telling him, "Hey, come on, up you go, get on with it," and away you go. So he's getting away with his cleverness.
From what I'm hearing, the James Owens actually called the doctor in because he got a slap in the chest. I think it was Brian Kincannon about 5 minutes before that. So I don't know if it was the contact lens thing the other day. I think he actually got a slap, and I think the umpire made James Owens aware of it, and he came in. But it's just amazing to see the couple of minutes after, and then all of a sudden Limerick are a completely different Limerick as well. It's mad.
Yeah, and I still doubt there was that much wrong with him. But another thing is we're talking about emotional responses, and like Henry Shefflin's done a lot of good. He's won 2 Club All-Irelands as manager and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just talking about this day in particular. So he's already a bit wound up on the sideline. And then Ciarán, is there a bit of cuteness in Will O'Donoghue to hit him a little half shoulder on the way past as well? Maybe just in the hope of winding him up a little bit more.
Yeah, possibly. Like, but to be fair, you know, like, in fairness to Henry, like, I think he probably got the best out of Galway this year in the last 2 or 3 games. And that's and a touch last year. If he got the same spin that he's getting out of Galway at the very start of the year, there'd be a total different animal. Like, on the line, Shane can be the most loneliest place to be at times, and, you know, and powerless. There's no more you can do. You know, whereas you have some chance in influencing a situation or a game when you have the jersey on. But when you're on the line, and I suppose what's supposed to be implemented, what you're supposed to be practicing, isn't manifesting on the field, then a bit of frustration is going to come up with Henry. Because to be fair with Henry, Henry's cool, he's calm usually. You know, it isn't like him to get a bit excited. And I would probably say possibly that might have been the driving force behind his frustration, because, you know, what was meant to happen probably didn't manifest in the field.
Hugh Paddy says Limerick's inside shooting is insane. Flanagan throws it up from awful angles over the shoulder. If it was anyone else, he'd get the curly finger, strikes the ball above the shoulder, and is deadly accurate. Detox 101 says, whatever you say about Nicky Quaid, isn't it an absolute endorsement for bringing back the Mayor Ferna? Mike Casey for an All-Star this year, says Father Paul Stone, the only player to start an All-Ireland for Limerick in the last 5 years who doesn't have an All-Star yet. Jeez, I hadn't copped that. Obviously, he had injuries there for a long spell as well, Michael.
Yeah, he's the only one, would you believe? And obviously he came off at the 55 minutes, I think, of the 18 final, and he's missed a fair whack of action, but he's been really solid this year. Outside of the Tipperary game, I think he's been really solid. And Ciarán, the block from, like, it was probably the weekend of saves / blocks. Conor Fogarty's block, Owen Murphy's save. Mike Casey's block was huge in the context of the game the other day. He just had to hurl out an active hurl. He was probably lucky that it hit off it. But the game, like, Galway could have been 8 or 9 up at that stage. Maybe we were talking about a different game. Maybe they would have come back anyway, but it was a huge play. Yeah,
you're right. And in fairness to Casey, he knew nothing about it. It was just like they had the rub of the green. And you're right. If that went in, because I can remember saying it to Liam Cahill, I said, that is a huge part of the game. That's going to be a huge turning point at Michael Casey. Total accident, but you do get the rub of the green from time to time, and he got it there. I think it's worth noting, all right, David Reedy, I think he's really after finding his mojo, meaning he appears to be actually comfortable playing at the pace he's playing at, and he also, and when I'm thinking now how he made the goal for Gillane, he now appears to be, I suppose, a regular, and he's going very well too. I think he's worth mentioning as well, to be fair.
He'd be starting his first All-Ireland final too if that was the case. Like, it'd be mad. And we were only saying on the show the other day, he was playing for Kildare in 2017 under one of your former teammates, Joe Quaid. It's amazing how his graph has gone from Christy Ring hurling back then to potentially starting an All-Ireland final, 6 years there.
Yeah, and in fairness, it didn't happen overnight. It was very gradual for him. He went through a poor old spell because he used to be coming on at times and take a few wild shots, wide. So eventually he's after coming. And it's worth noting now as well, you know, Cathal O'Neill would probably start in any other inter-county team in Ireland at his ease. And he's also playing awesome anytime he comes in. So that will give you an idea how strong they are in the line.
Ciarán, I was Googling as you were just talking about that last the match the other day. Did you say you were watching with Liam Cahill, or did I mishear you altogether?
No, you were right. You were on the ball. Myself, Liam Cahill, and Jamesy, we were up with BBC Sport.
Very good. Well, did you get any insights there from the season? Were you grilling Liam? You were. Shane,
I got a load of information, but I suppose my philosophy would be what happens in the mile stays in the mile.
Well, did you give him your tuppence worth at least?
I did, yeah. He was great company, but sound now. In fairness, actually, I wouldn't have met him since our playing days. You know, he played corner forward. Haven't met him at all, and you know, we do great 2 hours, great company.
Yeah, and Jamesy as well, I presume he was that the day of the Limerick game now, or the Kilkenny game?
The Limerick game, the Limerick and Galway game. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, nice experience, good fun, good bit of crack.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Actually, I tell this little story. Tis worth telling. We went in under the Crow Park in by the press area. So I met Jamesy. I said, "Lovely Jamesy, you're very familiar with this setting, so I'll follow you in case I get lost." So we went in anyway. So I was myself, Jamesy, Liam Cahill, and Joe Canning. We were chatting there just underneath the stand and where the buses come in. And Marty Morrissey spotted him to the right. Marty was just edging over, ready for a conversation. And as he was opening his mouth, I just made him my presentation for the keys in my car, Marty. There you go.
Good man.
Did he take it out?
Oh, it was very good, very good. They're talking great spirit, thank God.
Great stuff. So is there anything else, like in terms of Owen Murphy's save? How highly would you rank that? I'm sure you've seen some brilliant saves over the years.
Yeah, brilliant. But in fairness to Murphy has, you know, I suppose looking at Nicky this year, not as busy as he usually is. And I suppose that's an indication how good his defence is, you know, but still had a very good year. But Murphy, to me, as it stands, is a standout goalie. Outstanding. Now, he would have been prone to a better puck out, I suppose, in the last few years. He also has looked at that. But the save the other day was absolutely outstanding. He's a super goalkeeper. Actually, to be fair, there's great keepers there at the moment. And the new Tipperary goalkeeper, I put him down as outstanding. He's probably, and he's in his infancy in his trade, potentially he's probably the best of them to pick out a player. Because he is like an assassin. It's straight into the hand. There's no going left, there's no going right. He can pluck him out from anywhere. So he's going to be an outstanding goalkeeper. But going back to Murphy, outstanding save. And played a huge part in Kilkenny winning it as well.
I was just going back through some of his other great saves as well. He saved 3 or 4 from Galan in the 2018 quarter-final, a couple of kick shots as well. He's actually one of the main reasons that Limerick potentially aren't going for 6 in a row as well. Remember David Reedy broke through at the end of the semi-final in 19. He pulled off a great save from him down low. Ciarán, where does that save rank among the kind of the pantheon of greats? And looking back, I was going through it the other day. Remember Davy made a brilliant save from Paul Shelley in 1999, the Munster semi-final. Joe Quaid made a save with his right hand in the 1996 All-Ireland final from Larry Murphy that was unreal. Damien Martin in the 81 All-Ireland actually stopped a point and tipped it around the post for a 65 against Galway. Any particular save stand out? Or you've obviously had great goalies standing behind you at different stages, but is there any particular save that it would stand out or you'd measure it up against?
Yeah, and in fairness, Cunningham from Cork now would have made a great save. Poor old Tommy Quaid, Lord of mercy soul, you know, he was a brilliant shot stopper too. Yeah, and in fairness to Joe Quaid, right, Joe made outstanding saves in the few years that he was there. But like, I suppose, Mike, you know, every year you're going to see something that we haven't seen before. That's the beauty about the game. That's the beauty about hurling. And that's the beauty how it's kind of developing and changing. We tend to see something that we haven't seen before. Go back to Shane O'Donnell last week, the flick straight up to Kelly. You know, so, you know, he's worth mentioning now. He had an outstanding year as well. He had a super game. Duggan was extremely good as well in the second half. But, you know, that's the beauty about the game. We're seeing something new all the time, Mike.
This is a slight change in direction. Ciarán, do you have any interest in the 2 football matches this weekend, Derry versus Kerry and Dublin versus Monaghan?
Oh, I would. My grandfather would be from Waterford and Kerry, so I'd always have a little eye on the Kerry games. So I would. I'd go to a lot of the Kerry matches, Shane. I do, yeah. So I would big time, yeah. So, you know, yeah. And come here, I suppose at the end of the day, I suppose looking back at the neutral, are hoping and looking for the Kerry Dublin final. But funny enough, I'm watching Monaghan the last few years. Anytime they overlap, Kerry or Dublin, usually in league games, they give them bags of it. So that could be two very interesting games.
And is David Clifford your favourite player to watch, like everyone else almost?
Is David Clifford? Yeah, come here. He's the obvious one. But funny enough, I've serious time for his other brother, because when that fella is going, a bit like Keane Lynch, when Keane Lynch is at full flow, you can be sure Limerick are coming with him. And David Clifford's brother, what's his brother's first name? Sorry. Paddy. When Paddy is motoring well, the whole 5 other forwards in midfield, it's like a bit of a conveyor belt. they're all automatically playing well. Now, and to be fair to him, I would have seen him on several occasions playing club football well before he'd the Kerry senior jersey. And I'm sitting down, I'm scratching my head, and I'm saying to myself, how come they're not bringing this guy in? You know, so he missed a good number of years of his inter-county football career. You know, so thankfully, now people can see what he's made of. Yeah, but Kerry,
David always says that Paddy was a bit of not a late bloomer, but as they say in horsey terms, the penny dropped maybe a bit later that he realised he needed to go off and do a bit more or whatever. But I'd agree with you, Ciarán, and it's something we're going to talk about later. Who's the most important player for each team? When he's humming, the ball going inside to his brother, the ball going inside to Geaney, the amount when he's on the front foot, that's why teams a lot of the time, obviously there's going to be a man marker on Clifford, but like Conor Myler picked up Paddy Clifford the other day just to try and shut him down from setting up play, just to try and shut him down from being that kind of assist merchant that he is. But yeah, when he's in full flow, Kerry are a joy to watch, definitely.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah, without a doubt.
Ciarán, with the diving that we saw in hurling last weekend again, is it starting to get in your nerves a little bit? We were talking about how, and Limerick weren't the only ones, but Peter Casey, there was 3 frees in a row that he won in second half, and he fairly sold at least a couple of them. Brian Kincannon went down a bit handy once or twice. Walter Walsh as well did a big belly flop near the end line when David McInerney came over to him. Like, it just seems to be everywhere in hurling at this stage.
It does, Shane, but at the end of the day, going back to what we were talking about, Nicky Quaid, whether he's injured or not injured, whether it is good timing or bad timing, he slowed it down and got away with it. That's one side of it. Yeah, it's something I would like to see creeping down. Thankfully, the weekend we didn't see too many octopus passes. There was no pulling arms or tending arms. There wasn't too much of that. So that was great. And, you know, there were spells there. There were 2 very good games during the periods, like the Clare game and Kilkenny game. There was good standards of hurling through a lot of it. But I'd agree with you. Anybody who's doing that are kind of partaking in that activity. You know, I suppose in the old days, it would be started up by a player. You can't do that now, right? So it's up to the referee. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't do that. But, like, you know, you don't do that. Like, diving, I don't think it's shown. I don't think it's shown a great ingredient of your character when you're doing that. You know, I often say your full personality needs to come out in the field. And if that's part of your personality, then it wouldn't be a positive thing, in my opinion. You know, anybody throwing themselves down on the ground. Like Shane O'Donnell, to be fairness to him, right? He's not the biggest guy. You know, he'd go through a wall. You won't see him doing a Ginola or an Al on it. Not a hope. If he's taken out of it, he'll be taken out of it. But I think, Shane, inter-county players know themselves who would be inclined to pull a stroke like that. But you're right, it's not nice looking at it, and it isn't good viewing. And I would be hoping that it isn't a trend that players are going to do going forward.
Okay. Well, look, I think we'll tee up the game more specifically next week when we have you back on, Ciarán. So we'll probably keep the rest of the stuff in the chamber for then. So thanks for joining us today.
Not a bother. And both of you have a good day, and God bless both of you.
Cheers, Ciarán. Good man. Talk
Good luck. Bye.